Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, and I mean deep, into the world of Buddha Gotama.
Ah, yes. A fascinating figure, to say the least.
Absolutely. We've got your source text here, and we're going to use it to unpack not just the basic facts, but the more intriguing, often overlooked details. Really get to the heart of who he was and why he still matters.
I think even the name Buddha itself offers a good starting point, Kind of a hint about how to approach this whole thing.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity. What do you mean?
Well, see, Buddha isn't actually a name, right? It's a title. It means awakened one.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten that.
Which suggests there can be many Buddhas. This deep dive focuses on this particular Buddha, Gotama.
Gotama. Okay, so lots of potential Buddhas out there. That's an interesting thought. And speaking of interesting, your source text mentions these Jatakas, stories about Gotama's past lives. Is this where we wander into, like, myth and legend territory?
Not necessarily. Think of the Jatakas as birth stories, important in Buddhist tradition, emphasizing the idea of rebirth, many lifetimes, accumulating wisdom.
So not meant to be taken literally, but more symbolic.
Exactly. They illustrate key Buddhist concepts.
I see. So they give us insight into those core principles, even if we can't, confirm every detail historically.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the historical context we do have. Gotama was born way back in the 6th or 5th century BCE in what's now Nepal and India, right?
Yeah, that's right, in the kingdom of the Shukyas. And his birth story, it's full of symbolism right from the start. His mother, she has this dream of a white elephant entering her womb.
Ah, yes. The white elephant. It's just a cool image, right? I know it has deep meaning in Buddhist culture.
Absolutely. It symbolizes purity, wisdom, royal power. So this dream, people saw it as predicting Gotama would be an exceptional individual, destined for great things, whether as a powerful ruler or a spiritual leader.
It's amazing how these symbolic details weave into the narrative. And speaking of tangible connections to the past, Emperor Ashoka, he put up a pillar at the supposed birthplace, Lumbini.
And that pillar is still standing today. Imagine that, something erected in the 3rd century BCE, still there. A testament to how much Gotama's life, his teachings, impacted people even centuries after he was gone.
It must be pretty incredible to visit that site, to be there, Okay, so baby Gotama is born, given the name Siddhartha, meaning one whose aim is accomplished. But he's not going to stay a prince forever, is he?
Nope, he doesn't. And this is where I think we start to see this idea of the middle way emerging, even before Gotama becomes a Buddha.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, he's living this lavish, sheltered life as a prince. But everything changes when he ventures out beyond the palace walls.
Yeah, this is where he has those classic awakening moments, right? Encountering the harsh realities of life.
Exactly. For the first time, he sees aging, sickness, death, and that kind of shatters this illusion of a perfect world that he's been living in.
Heavy stuff.
Right. But amidst all this suffering, he notices this wandering ascetic, someone who's renounced all worldly possessions. And he's struck by this ascetic's sense of peace.
So it's that contrast, the suffering versus the peace, that really sets him on his quest for truth.
Exactly. That's the pivotal moment, realizing that worldly pleasures, all those possessions, they're temporary. True peace has to come from somewhere else, from within, not from external things. It sets him on his path to find a different kind of fulfillment.
He doesn't just, snap his fingers and achieve enlightenment, though, right? Your source text talks about him studying with various teachers, trying different practices, even extreme self-mortification.
Yeah, he goes to extremes, for sure. Which actually I think is an important point. Even someone who would become the Buddha didn't have all the answers right away, had to go through that trial and error to find what really worked.
So a good reminder for all of us, right? Finding our own path is a process.
Exactly, not some instant revelation.
But he does eventually reject those extremes, doesn't he?
He does. Neither extreme indulgence nor extreme denial leads to liberation. And that's where this idea of the middle way starts to really take shape, this balanced path that becomes central to all his teachings.
So he's rejected these extremes, and now we get to that really iconic image, right? Gotama meditating under the Bodhi tree, facing down temptation from Mara, this whole, Lord of the Senses thing. It's like a scene straight out of a movie.
It's definitely powerful imagery. The Bodhi tree representing enlightenment and Mara embodying all those things that try to distract us, lead us astray.
A reminder that the path to enlightenment, it's not always easy, right? There's going to be challenges along the way, both internal and external.
Exactly. And I think that's where Gotama's perseverance really stands out, his commitment. He doesn't give in to those temptations, stays focused on his meditation. And it's there, under that tree, on the full moon in May, that he achieves enlightenment, becomes the Buddha.
And you mentioned earlier that the spots marked by a stupa, these stupas, they're pretty common in Buddhism, aren't they? What's their significance exactly?
Yeah, stupas are sacred monuments. You'll see them all over the Buddhist world. They serve as reminders of the Buddha's teachings. Often they contain relics, like physical representations of his legacy. And the one at the site of his enlightenment, it's a major pilgrimage destination for Buddhists.
Wow. Okay, so his enlightenment happens under the Bodhi tree. Then he gives his first sermon at Sarnath, which, if I remember correctly, is also marked by a stupa. What are the big ideas he lays out in that first teaching?
It's called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and it's considered the foundation of his teachings. He introduces the Four Noble Truths, which really form the core of Buddhism. They're all about understanding suffering and the path to liberation.
Okay. Yeah, this is where things get a little more philosophical. I've heard about the Four Noble Truths, but honestly, I could use a refresher. What's the first one again?
The first noble truth is that suffering exists, or dukkha in Pali, the language the Buddha spoke. It's just part of life, not meant to be all doom and gloom, but more of a realistic acknowledgement of the human experience.
So we start by recognizing that suffering is real.
Okay.
I can see how that might be hard for some people to, accept, though.
It's a shift in perspective, that's for sure. But by acknowledging suffering, we can start to investigate where it comes from, And that leads us to the second noble truth. The cause of suffering is craving, tanha in Pali.
Right, that constant wanting, always wanting more, wanting things to be different than they are.
Exactly. It's that clinging and grasping that keeps us stuck in this cycle of dissatisfaction.
Makes sense. So if craving causes suffering, is there a way to escape it?
There is. That's the good news. That's where the third noble truth comes in. The cessation of suffering is possible, and that state of liberation is called nirvana. But it's important to note that nirvana isn't like some heavenly paradise. It's more about a state of being. Profound peace and understanding comes from letting go of that craving and attachment we were just talking about.
Nirvana. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I'm starting to understand it a bit better now in this context. Okay, so nirvana is the goal then. Freedom from suffering. But how do we actually get there?
That's where the fourth noble truth comes in. It lays out the path, the Eightfold Path, a set of guidelines for living a life that leads to liberation. Think of it like a roadmap.
Okay, a roadmap. I like that. So the Eightfold Path, there are 8 parts to it, right?
Yep. And it's not just about checking boxes. It's more of an integrated approach. It covers right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. Covers our inner world, like our thoughts and intentions, but also our outer world, how we act, and even, it sounds like, what kind of work we do.
Right. It's pretty holistic.
Could we maybe break down a couple of those just to make them a little more concrete? Like, what does right speech actually mean in practice?
Sure. Let's take right speech. It's all about communicating truthfully and kindly, avoiding harmful language, gossip, that kind of thing. Especially these days, with so much communication happening online, right speech is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's about using our words to create harmony, not more conflict.
I can see how practicing right speech would have a huge impact. Yeah. Not just on individuals, but on society as a whole. Okay, what about, right mindfulness? That one's become super popular lately.
Right. Mindfulness is about cultivating awareness of the present moment, paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations without judgment, just noticing them. And that helps you break free from those habitual reactive patterns.
So it's kind of like hitting pause on that autopilot mode that we all tend to slip into. No wonder it's so helpful in our crazy busy world.
It is. It gives you the ability to respond rather than just react. And it's something anyone can do, no matter who you are, what you believe.
Okay, so we follow Gautama from Prince to Seeker to awakened Buddha. He spends decades sharing these teachings. But eventually, all things come to an end. He dies in Kusinara, achieving parinirvana. Now, earlier we talked about nirvana. What's the difference between nirvana and parinirvana?
Good question. Nirvana is that liberation from suffering you can attain in this life. Parinirvana is the final, complete cessation of the cycle of rebirth. It happens at death for someone who's attained nirvana. It's the ultimate goal in Buddhism, beyond suffering, beyond all limitations.
So even in death, there are different levels of enlightenment. This is getting pretty complex.
Buddhism is definitely a rich and nuanced tradition, and even in the Buddha's death, there's a bit of, drama, according to your source text. There's a dispute over his relics.
Relics? What are relics exactly? And why were people fighting over them?
Relics are like physical remains associated with the Buddha, parts of his body, objects he used, they're considered sacred, and yet different groups wanted to possess them after his death, which is kind of ironic considering his teachings on non-attachment.
It is ironic when you think about it, fighting over his remains when he spent his life teaching about letting go. So how did they resolve this whole relic showdown?
Well, this wise Brahmin, he steps in, reminds everyone about the Buddha's message of peace, of harmony, how fighting over these relics is totally going against everything the Buddha stood for. It's a good reminder for us, too.
It is. So what ended up happening to the relics?
They divided them up, placed them in stupas, those dome-shaped monuments we were talking about before. They built them in different locations. And those stupas became places of devotion, pilgrimage sites, physical reminders of the Buddha's teachings.
It's kind of mind-blowing. Structures built over 2,500 years ago, and they're still standing today, a testament to his enduring impact. But why do you think Buddha Gotama's teachings continue to resonate with people even now, across cultures, across time?
I think it's because, at their core, his teachings address something universal about the human experience, It's about the human condition. We all experience suffering in some way. We all grapple with desires and attachments. And I think we all long for some kind of lasting peace, some kind of happiness. And the Buddhist teachings, they offer a practical way to approach all that, to navigate those challenges, to find that liberation, no matter who you are or what you believe.
So it's not about, being Buddhist per se.
No, not necessarily. It's something deeper than that. It's about, the fundamentals.
It's a path of self-discovery, not just blind faith.
Exactly. He encouraged his followers to question, to investigate, to find their own path to enlightenment. It's about personal experience, not just taking things at face value.
And that's a really powerful message, especially today, right? In this world where we're just, bombarded with information all the time.
Think about it. We're constantly distracted, always something new to crave. And I think the Buddha's teachings offer tools for finding some stillness, some peace, some clarity amidst all that chaos.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Buddha Gotama, his life, his legacy, I'm left with this question. How do we apply all this? Specifically that idea of the middle way. How does that apply to our lives today, to the challenges we face?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? In a world where it feels like everything's so extreme, we're constantly being pulled in different directions. So how do we find that balance? How do we bring those principles like right speech, right action, mindfulness into our everyday lives?
It's definitely a challenge, but maybe also an opportunity.
It is. And I think the Buddha's teachings offer a timeless guide. They show us how to cultivate wisdom, compassion, even amidst all the complexities of modern life. It's a reminder that the path to awakening, it's available to everyone, and it starts with taking that first step.
Toward understanding, toward awareness, toward finding our own middle way. That's a great takeaway. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we hope you'll keep exploring these ideas, see how they resonate with you.